My affair partner made my husband a promise. My affair partner made my husband a promise. I didn't know about it until 3 months after the affair ended. By then, I had already lost both of them. One night, I found an envelope on my kitchen table. My name wasn't on it. Neither was my husband's. There were only 3 words written across the front. For when she knows. I knew the handwriting immediately. It belonged to Marcus, the man I'd been secretly seeing for almost a year. My hands started shaking before I even opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, 5 sentences. The first said, "I promised your husband I'd never tell you why I left." I stopped breathing, because I'd always believed Marcus had left me because he was tired of the affair. That wasn't the truth. He had left because of a promise he'd made to my husband. My name is Claire. I'd been married to Daniel for 12 years. For most of those years, I thought I understood my husband. He was quiet, patient, predictable. The kind of man who never raised his voice. The kind of man who would rather walk away from an argument than win it. I used to think that made him weak. Now I understand it was one of the things I loved most about him. I just forgot. Our marriage wasn't perfect. There were arguments. There were long stretches where we barely talked. Daniel worked too much. I felt ignored. He thought I was unhappy with everything he did. Instead of fixing it together, we slowly became strangers living in the same house. Then I met Marcus. He was different. He noticed everything. He remembered tiny details. He sent messages just because he missed me. He made me feel exciting again. And when he looked at me, I felt like the most important woman in the world. I told myself that feeling meant I was in love. The first time Marcus kissed me, I knew I was crossing a line. I should have stopped. Instead, I kissed him back. The affair lasted 11 months. 11 months of lies. 11 months of deleted messages. 11 months of pretending I was working late. 11 months of telling myself I was eventually going to leave Daniel. Marcus believed me. At least I thought he did. He constantly asked when I was going to leave. Soon. When? I don't know. You've been saying that for months. I need time. What are you waiting for? I don't know. The truth was that I was waiting for Daniel to make the decision easier. I wanted him to become unbearable. I wanted him to give me a reason to leave without feeling guilty. But Daniel never did. He remained kind. He remained patient. And somehow that made my guilt worse. Then one evening, Daniel asked me, "Do you still love me?" I looked at him. "Of course." He nodded. "Okay." That was all. I didn't know he'd already found out. 2 weeks later, Marcus called me. "We need to talk." I knew immediately something was wrong. "What's happening?" "I can't do this anymore." "What?" "I've made a decision." "What decision?" "I'm leaving." I started crying. "You can't." "I have to." "Why?" He didn't answer. "Is there someone else?" "No." "Then why?" He said quietly, "Because I promised." I didn't understand. "Promised who?" He hung up. The next morning, he was gone. No goodbye. No explanation. No final meeting. Nothing. I spent weeks trying to contact him. He changed his number, deleted his social media, left his job. I couldn't find him. And Daniel never said a word. Our marriage collapsed soon after. I couldn't forgive Daniel for being distant. He couldn't forgive me for the affair. We separated. 3 months later, I found the envelope. For when she knows, I opened it. The first sentence said, "I promised your husband I'd never tell you why I left." The second said, "He asked me to give you something he couldn't." The third said, "Time." I read it again. The fourth sentence said, "He told me you needed to choose your life without either of us making the choice for you." And the last sentence said, "He still loves you. That's why he let you go." I couldn't stop crying. I called Daniel. He answered. "Hello? Did you meet Marcus?" Silence. "Yes." "When?" "Before he left." "Why?" Daniel sighed. "Because he came to see me." I sat down. "What did he want?" "He wanted to know if I was going to fight for you." I closed my eyes. "What did you say?" I told him I wasn't going to fight someone who had already chosen another man. But I hadn't chosen him. Daniel was silent. "That's what Marcus said." I didn't understand. "He said you kept telling him you were going to leave me." I was. "But you never did." "No." Daniel took a breath. "Marcus asked me what I wanted." "And?" "I told him I wanted you to be happy." I started crying again. "Even if that meant losing me?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because loving someone isn't the same as owning them." I couldn't speak. Then Daniel told me what Marcus had promised him. "He promised he wouldn't pressure you anymore." I froze. "What?" "He promised that if you wanted to leave, you'd leave because you chose to." I looked down. "And if I wanted to stay?" "He would walk away." That's what he'd done. Marcus hadn't left because he'd stopped loving me. He'd left because he'd realized our relationship couldn't become something honest while I was still married. He had made my husband a promise, and he'd kept it. I asked Daniel where Marcus was. He didn't know, but he gave me something else. A photograph. It was taken the night Marcus came to meet him. The two of them were sitting across from each other. No anger, no hatred. Just two men talking. On the back of the photograph, Daniel had written, "This is the night he chose to do the right thing." I kept that photograph. For months, I blamed Marcus for leaving. Then I blamed Daniel for letting him. Eventually, I realized neither man had made the decision for me. They had both stepped away. And for the first time in years, I had to decide what I actually wanted. I wanted Daniel. But wanting him wasn't enough. I had to become someone worthy of being trusted again. I went to therapy. I apologized without asking for forgiveness. I stopped making excuses. I admitted that my affair hadn't happened because Daniel was a bad husband. It happened because I chose the easy escape instead of having the difficult conversation. Daniel and I didn't immediately reconcile. We spent months talking, sometimes for hours, sometimes we said almost nothing. But eventually, he asked me something. "Do you know why Marcus made that promise?" I shook my head. "Because he loved you." I looked at him. Daniel smiled sadly. "And because he finally understood something I had known for a long time." "What?" "You can't build a life with someone who hasn't decided what kind of person they want to be." I cried. "I wanted both of you." "I know." "But I lost both." Daniel nodded. "That's what happens when you refuse to choose." We eventually rebuilt our marriage. Not the old one. A different one. One where we actually talked. One where we stopped assuming the other person could read our minds. One where I understood that being loved didn't mean constantly being entertained. Years later, I found the envelope again. The paper had started to fade. I read the first sentence. "I promised your husband I'd never tell you why I left." I finally understood what that promise meant. Marcus hadn't promised Daniel that he would stop loving me. He hadn't promised that he'd forget me. He hadn't even promised that he'd never speak to me again. He promised that he wouldn't take away my choice. He could have convinced me to leave Daniel. He could have pressured me. He could have made Daniel look like the villain. He could have told me everything my husband had said. Instead, he walked away. And Daniel did the same. They both gave me something I hadn't given either of them: the freedom to choose honestly. I chose my husband. But I'll never forget the man who could have taken advantage of my confusion and instead made my husband a promise. Because sometimes the most painful form of love isn't holding on, it's stepping away and trusting someone to finally choose for themselves.